I always think is very unpredictable when those kinds of questions are put to the people that said, I support the citizen-initiated referendum process. But I've seen my job as being one where I can convince Albertans that they don't need to have that vote.
Journalism and commentary 1 year anniversary.
I don't believe journalism being funded by the government is the solution.
You have to rebuild the foundation.
You have to retell the stories.
Market conservative
Other news that actually matters.
I hence wanted to ask. I think they should answer their questions, especially if they're politically charged with.
Hello, I'm Cantin-Nantel and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm really excited to be launching this new independent media venture with an exclusive interview with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Premier Smith has been one of the most newsworthy and outspoken politicians in Canada in the last few years, ever since her political comeback in 2022, when she became the second United Conservative Party Premier of Alberta, taking over from Jason Kenney. As Premier, she's advocated for greater autonomy for Alberta, in part with the Alberta Sovereignty Act, and she has changed referendum rules to make it easier for Albertans to trigger referendums. She has also not shied away from controversial issues, sparking national debates, including on sex and gender, on education, oil and gas, and more. In our conversation, we discuss Prime Minister Mark Carney and how he's performing so far. We talk about her move to ban sexualized books in schools. I ask her if an Alberta independence referendum would give her province an advantage when dealing with Ottawa, similar to how Quebec seems to have an advantage after having had two independence referendum. And we discussed her tour of the province that she's currently doing for her Alberta Next panels, where she's hearing directly from Albertans about the future of the province. So without further ado, here's Alberta Premier Danielle Smith.
Well, I'm here with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Premier, thank you so much for sitting down with us. We are nearing 6 months of Prime Minister Mark Carney. In your view, has he been a better Prime Minister for Alberta than Justin Trudeau?
Well, the language is better. I mean, we're hearing about Canada being one of the strongest economies in the G7, if not the strongest economy. We're hearing him want to be an economic superpower. We're hearing him want to talk about developing traditional as well as new energy resources. All of those are very positive. He did repeal the carbon tax as one of his first acts, as well as the capital gains tax changes. So he's demonstrated that bad policy, once he's identified it, can be reversed. So we helped him out. There were 9 other bad policies we wanted him to reverse. Unfortunately, we've seen zero action on those, and that's very troubling. And so we have a parliament returning on September the 15th. I'm hoping that the House Leader will come forward and talk about the legislation plan for the fall, and that we begin to see some meaningful efforts to reduce the laws or to either rescind or revise the laws that are impacting our investment climate.
A file you were quite involved in with the threat of tariffs. You went to the US a couple of times. That was kind of the whole notion for electing Mark Carney, was that he was going to stand up for Trump. He was going to get us a deal. And yet we still don't have a deal. What do you make of that?
I would say that we have had in Alberta an office in Washington since 2005. I know that Quebec has a lot of international offices, and they take matters into their own hands when it comes to advancing their own interests. So we're learning a little bit from Quebec about how to do the same. It's part of the reason why not only do we have a presence, but I'll be spending a lot of time building those relationships. I can tell you I have very little confidence that if I left things in the hands of the federal Liberals, that they would be able to advocate for oil and gas development as effectively as I can. So I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. I think it's important. It's the biggest trade relationship that we have with the United States. It's the biggest product that moves back and forth across the border is oil and gas. And we want to make sure that we're talking about ways in which our economic interests and the Americans' economic and national interests are aligned. So we're going to continue doing that. There's a lot of complication. You've got, I think, certain policies that have been irritants to the United States, whether it's on the digital services tax or the supply management and the way the quota has been implemented and a few other things. And so I think that's got them off to a bit of a rocky start, but I think we're all very hopeful that the Prime Minister is going to be able to maintain the CUSMA exemption. One thing that is quite legitimate is that we do still have the best trade deal of any of the countries of the world, because 97% of the goods covered by the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement are able to cross the border tariff-free. If we can maintain that, we'll be in very good shape as a country. And then there's additional work that needs to be done on timber, steel, aluminum, and auto parts.
Your government decided that it would no longer allow school libraries to have explicit books, and I've seen the images of some of these books and some of the words of some of these books, and in my view are quite inappropriate. And that said, the left in Alberta has attacked you on this. They've accused you of being a book banner, and the Edmonton School Board decided to pull all of these classic books by basically taking your instructions so literally, and you've had since to make some corrections. Premier, banning explicit books shouldn't be a partisan issue, in my opinion. And of all the things they could criticize you for, why do you think they've decided to politicize this and make this a controversy?
Well, it could be that Edmonton Public was the worst offender. I mean, they were the ones who had pornographic images on the bookshelves in their schools. We released the list. It was Calgary Board of Education and Edmonton Public Board of Education that had the books that parents were concerned about. And so maybe they're feeling a little bit defensive, but there was no question that the way they were implementing the policy was not what we intended. What we intended was that graphic, pornographic images not be available to young children in elementary school. When you get to be older in high school, it's a different story. And so high school students who've gone through puberty and who are exploring challenging issues should be able to have access to the classics and to other books to be able to explore that. But what we're interested in doing is making sure that there is age-appropriate material in public libraries. When parents send their kids to school, they don't expect them to be able to go to the library and look at pornographic images. And we're going to assure them that won't happen anymore.
There could be an Alberta referendum on independence in 2026. I know that you support a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, and that was the title of your legislation. That said, Premier, do you think that having a referendum, having the rest of Canada see that Alberta leaving Canada is now a step closer to reality, could that put you in a better place when it comes to negotiating the way that Quebec has been able to seemingly get a lot of what it asks for because it has had 2 independence referendums?
What I would hope is that we have such a constructive and positive reset on our relationship with Canada that we don't need to have a vote of that nature. That's what I've been working towards, because those emotions can get very high and surprises can happen. The 1995 Quebec referendum, it almost ended up going the other way. The thing was split between the yes and no side by 1 percentage point. The Remain campaign in Britain, they ended up losing too. The no side ended up having it. So I always think it's very unpredictable when those kinds of questions are put to the people. That said, I support the citizen-initiated referendum process, but I've seen my job as being one where I can convince Albertans that they don't need to have that vote, because Canada understands us, and Canada is removing the bad laws that have been targeting our industry and that have gone against the direction Albertans want to take. So I hope that Prime Minister Carney is watching that as well. I've told him to take it seriously. I said, your predecessor created this movement, but he's the one who can take the air out of it. All he has to do is take our concerns seriously, start exiting provincial jurisdiction, stop trying to direct things from the center, and allow us to develop our economy. And I think that you'll see very quickly that Albertans will just get down to work.
You are going across the province right now for the Alberta Next panels to try to get speak to Albertans about what's next for Alberta and how you can do different things related to autonomy. And there's been other issues that have come up. How is that going? And also, can you speak to me a bit, Premier, why for you it's important to go to the people directly rather than just maybe do a poll or a focus group or to select people? Why do you go directly to the people, even if it means that you're going to have detractors and people that are opposed to you come and, There
was a previous panel, the Fair Deal panel. I'd encourage you to have a look at it. It came up with 25 different recommendations that really has guided our work over the last 5 years. Many of the things that we prioritized came out of that process. It was a very, very healthy process. And so I believe in these kinds of engagements. Me being there allows people to know how seriously I take this. That if we're going to take on more responsibilities and more like Quebec, and start collecting our own taxes and having our own pension and developing our own immigration system and our own police, that I want to hear from them. I want to know if they think that we're ready for it. I think we are. I think that we're a jurisdiction that is the third largest economy. We've got 5 million people. We have our own trade offices around the world that allow us to be able to build our own trade ties. When you're in the position that we are, I think it just makes sense for us to develop more responsibilities. And not everyone agrees with me, but that's part of the reason why you put some of these things to referendum from time to time, is that you want to hear if Albertans are with you. And so I'm getting a pretty good gauge that there's polarization on a lot of these issues, but also some widespread consensus on many of them. So we'll finish the process on October 1st, meet as a panel, and then decide which items we're going to move on, which ones we're going to shelve, and which ones have to be put to the people in the spring.
Well, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, thank you so much for sitting down with us, and thank you for supporting independent media.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. I hope you liked it. If you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to not miss a new upload, and subscribe to my Substack. Also follow me on X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And if you're feeling generous, consider getting a paid subscription to my Substack or making a one-time contribution, because unlike some legacy media outlets, I refuse to take government subsidies for journalism. I believe journalism should not be funded by the government, so your support helps me stay independent. Until next time, God bless.